Okay, so this is the end of Sunday, the last day for the 2025 Vintage Offroad Nationals. So today I ran in classic four-wheel drive buggy, and Y2K two-wheel drive buggy. We'll go over classic first. So that's the class where I entered the mid-motor Tamiya Madcap. That was maybe the most surprising. I mentioned yesterday that I didn't put any track time in with that car until this morning, um, because I was focused on all of my other equipment. And I came into it with the expectation that it would be at least as fast in a straight line as the Manta Ray or the DF01 Manta Ray Dirt Thrasher, because it was using the same exact gearbox. And I was using the same exact gearing as I have on my Dirt Thrasher. So I figured, okay, well, it should be at least as fast as a straight line. But it wasn't. It was slower. And I wasn't exactly sure why. So my initial response was to gear up. So I geared up, and I ended up using the speed tuned gear set. So I went down to a 69 tooth spur, and I kept a 21 tooth pinion. It was still too slow. So I went to a 25, and that was no better. Initially it was okay, and then toward the end of the run it got really slow, and I was like, what's going on? And I checked the motor temperature. The motor temperature was okay with the fan running there. It was in, like, I can't remember, below 150 for sure. So then I was looking at how much charge I dumped out of the battery, because if you may recall from that car, I'm using a 2.6 amp hour, like, ultra shorty. And I did that partly because of the way I mounted the electronics, and I'm just trying to figure out what can fit in there, and also for weight. I want to keep the car light. But for the first two qualifiers, I was dumping 2.3 amp hours out of the pack. So basically the battery voltage was getting really low. So toward the end of the run, I had nothing left. Like, there was very little voltage to actually drive the car quickly. So that's why I was slowing down. It wasn't really a gearing problem. So, okay, I had to dump less. So the first step I did was to gear back down. I kept the 69 tooth spur, but I went back down to a 21 tooth pinion. Then I also looked at the motor, and the commutator looked a little dirty. So I figured, okay, well, maybe I'm also dumping a lot of current just with a dirty motor, but I'm pretty sure the motor was new when I put it in. I could be wrong, but I thought it was new-ish. So then, every year when you sign up for Classic, they give you a handout motor. So you get a fresh one. So I installed the fresh motor with a 2169 gearing, and that did okay with the fan, because the fan also consumes power. But then with the fan and that gearing, I only used about 1700 milliamp hours. So I used 600 milliamp hours less, and I was going a bit faster. My straight line speed was comparable to most of the DF01s that were on the track. Although there was one guy in a Manta Ray who eventually won the A main, he TQ'd and he won. It was much faster than the rest of us. He must have broken in his motor, very nicely. I didn't break mine in at all. I just put it in and ran it. So then I figured, okay, well, the qualifiers were 6 minutes long. The mains are 8. And I need to make that 2.6 amp hour pack last through 8 minutes and have enough voltage at the end to still be going quickly. So I can't use 2.6 amp hours. I got to use, let's say, under 2 amp hours so that I'm still at the right part of the voltage discharge curve. So then that got me thinking, okay, maybe I should take the fan out, because with the fan on there and the 2169 gearing and the new motor, it was coming off the track at 100 degrees. So that gave me like a 50-degree, 60-degree margin to be able to take the fan off. And I figured, okay, maybe I can get away with it. In the A main, the motor came off at 200 degrees without the fan, which it basically cooked the motor. And I don't know, I didn't charge that pack back up. I just put it into storage mode because it was the end of the day. I put all my packs into storage mode so I can pack up and leave. So I don't know how much charge I used. But yeah, the main didn't go well. I ended up finishing dead last. I qualified 6th, I think, And I worked my way up the field. I think I might have gotten up to fifth or fourth within the first few laps. But then I had a few bobbles, and I progressively fell back, especially as the car was getting slower, um, because of the smaller battery pack, I think. So yeah, by the end of the race, I was going really slow, and people were just running circles around me. So unless I could figure out a way to get more speed out of that car, which is not obvious to me, I'm going to have to put that aside and go back to using my dirt thrasher. Um, so at least so far, it seems like that experiment that I ran using the exact same gearbox between a four-wheel drive chassis and a two-wheel drive chassis, the four-wheel drive chassis is still faster. Um, okay, so what can I do? Well, maybe I can do a special break-in on the motor. Some people will dunk the motor in water and run it for a little while and help to break in the motor brushes so they wrap around the commutator better. Okay, you could do that. Would that really make all of the difference? I'm not so sure. Maybe I could rearrange the electronics to run a larger battery pack so I could have more voltage over more of the discharge throughout the qualifiers and the mains. Maybe that would help. Okay, I could try that. Um, because otherwise, like, the car felt good. Like, it handled nicely, so I can't really complain about that. But it still wasn't like there were still some areas where, in terms of handling, it could have done better. Like, corner exit is always going to be a problem. It's a mid-motor buggy. Even with this dinky little sport tune motor, there were areas where it was a little bit loose on corner exit. So, that's where a Manta Ray or Dirt Thrasher would have had a clear advantage. So it looked really cool going around the track. I mean, I'll give it that. But yeah, it was not a competitive platform, unfortunately. Okay, so that's classic. For a Y2K buggy, I ran the Kyosho RB5. Uh, they didn't water the track last night like they did on Friday night. They watered the track before Saturday, so the surface was different. So here they let it rubber in on Saturday, and they just kept it that way for Sunday, so the track got even more rubbered in. So then the tires that were doing really well for me on Thursday open practice and Friday morning weren't doing quite so well as the track was rubbering in. So I was running green ellipses, I was running Pro-Line blue transistors, and those are great earlier in the event, but later on, like by today, they, at least on 2.0 buggy, they weren't quite so great. So I did like the first round of qualifiers. I think I was on, what did I use? Might have been, I think I was using M4 electrons. And for the first few laps, they were fine. But then toward the middle of the qualifier, they weren't so great. But I managed to put together, I think, like a fourth or fifth place qualifying position. Um, and then for the round 2 of qualifying, I figured, well, other people have been going to slick. So I happen to have a set of inversions that I brought with me mounted to Kyosho rims. So I figured, okay, let me put inversions on the rear. And then I'll keep the ellipses up front because they were giving me good steering. And I sauced the inversions, which was maybe a mistake because that made them a little slicker, I think. But also, actually, no, they didn't make them slicker. The inversions did give me more rear grip because there was enough of a groove on the track, it made a difference. But I was having some problems with the steering, feeling really laggy, and I wasn't sure if it was because of the tires or something else. So when I looked at the car later, it turns out that there was bind in the steering, so I had to sort of get that out. And then for the third qualifier, I figured I'd go back to running the Pro-Line M4 transistors in the rear, angled bar tread. And those didn't feel great. They felt pretty loose. They felt a lot like the electrons did in the second half of the first qualifier. So through all of that, I cobbled together like a fifth place or something qualifying position for Y2K buggy. So then for the main, I figured, okay, well, I have the steering tightness sorted out. So let me go back to inversions for the rear tires. I didn't sauce them. I didn't do anything. I just kept them sort of dirty. And that was actually my best race. I worked my way up to second place. I had a really good battle with Owen Simmons. We were kind of going back and forth a bit. That was a lot of fun. That was like my only decent race throughout the event. But we both made errors, unforced errors. But I managed to just barely get the better of him for that race. I had no chance of getting first place. Chris Van Air was also running, and he was well ahead in first place. He was actually about to lap us, and he just kind of held back because he had such a large lead that he was just, because Owen and I were fighting for second place, so he just held back behind me and just let us sort of fight it out for second place. And then once that was decided, I let him pass, and he just went off and kept pulling a bigger lead. But yeah, that was a fun race. So I finished second in Y2K buggy, and I was expecting at least a podium finish because the RB5 is just an amazing buggy. So at least I got that. And then for classic four-wheel buggy, I ran the 94 YZ10. On that car, I was able to still run a treaded tire. So I did one round with ellipses, green ellipses front and rear, and then another round with, what else did I try? I think another round I had Pro-Line M4 transistors in the back and M4 transistors up, what is it? Transistors? Yeah, some other tire up front, but Pro-Line M4 is up front. And what I ended up settling on was J Concepts green ellipses up front and the M4 transistors in the back, the angled bar tread. And that was really good. Even though the track was rubbered in and I was on a treaded tire, it felt pretty good. The rear was maybe a little bit loose, but overall it was quite good. So I ended up qualifying third. Had a really good battle with Brock Peterson and a little bit with Chris Van Air because he was TQ, but he had some, he made some unforced errors throughout the main, so he was giving us some opportunity to catch him. Not that he meant to, but the circumstances gave Brock and I opportunity to catch up to Chris. So there were a couple laps there where we were all within, a second or two of each other battling for the lead. And then Chris managed to pull ahead, and then it was really between Brock and myself, and we had a nice battle for second place for a couple of laps. I got ahead of him, and then Chris bobbled, and I caught him, and on that same lap where I was maybe had a chance to pass him for first, I flipped over. So then I ended up back in third place. I had to work my way back up to catch Brock, and there were certain parts of the track where I was faster than him, so I managed to sort of pull it back, but then I flipped over again. So then I ended up in like sixth place or something, and then I had to work my way back up, and I was working my way up to fourth place, and I figured, okay, I'm fast enough. Maybe I can squeeze out a third place before the 8 minutes is up. Maybe I can catch third place. And then I had another bobble. And so, by the end of the race, I was pretty far back. There was no chance of getting a podium finish, which is unfortunate because four-wheel drive is usually my best class. So, kind of sad that I didn't get a podium finish, but at the same time, I'm happy that both of my YZ10s for both the Saturday four-wheel drive class and the Sunday four-wheel drive class, they're incredibly good. So I know they have the pace as long as the slippers are tight enough and as long as I don't make unforced errors. The car is definitely there. And I also know that based on how today went, certainly I can keep pace with some really fast guys. So the main thing for this surface, for the way the car was running, was to try not to traction roll. There were some areas where I was getting on the brakes to make it into a hairpin, but it was in such a way that I ended up actually flipping forward. And that cost me a lot of time. It happened twice, I think. But other than that, the car was amazing. So I'm definitely bringing the 94 YZ10 back next year, or at least, again, this is what my mindset is right now for classic four-wheel buggy. That's the obvious faster car given the other four-wheel drive buggies I have that would qualify for that class. So there's like the Cat 2000, the Cat 2000 EC, the Kyosho Laser ZX-RR, all very good buggies. But I cannot drive any of those with the degree of confidence and almost reckless abandon as I can with that YZ10. That car is just amazing. So, and I really can't think of anything that can come close. Like maybe the Cat 2000, maybe, with the right suspension setup, but that's about it. So, okay, that's how the 3 events went today. Looking forward to next year. What am I going to do? Well, for Classic, most likely the Dirt Thrasher. For Y2K Buggy, I'll bring the RB5 back, the Kyosho RB5. That'll be my sort of reference point. But I'd really like to try to run a low C XXX. So if I can get it ready in time, I'll bring both of those for Y2K. If the XXX can run as well as the RB5, then I would try out the XXX. And then for Classic 4-wheel buggy, at the very least, it's the 94 YZ10. I can't really think of anything else that I'd want to bring for that. Maybe a backup YZ10, something like that. And then I mentioned yesterday what I would do for the Saturday classes. So for 2-wheel buggy, actually I'm thinking of just 3 cars. It would be low C XX, the mid motor XX, and the RC10 B2. So more conventional options. But I think within those 3, I would find something that's really good and consistent throughout the evolution of the track throughout the weekend. And then stadium truck would be the XX TCR. I don't think I would need to bring the RC10 T2 back because I have 2 XXTs. So I could have one as a backup for the other. So something like that. And then for 4-wheel buggy, XX4, S Factory X5, and the 95 YZ10. And that would be a pretty good, pretty solid collection of cars to bring for next year. That should be a really competitive package. Yeah, so that's how the racing went. I only got 1 trophy, 2nd place for Y2K Buggy. There were other years where I had more trophies, but that's okay. I had a great time. It was really nice to see everybody. Some of these folks I only see once a year at Vonats. Some of them I see less than that because not every one of those people makes it to every Vonats. Yeah, it was really good. Thanks to Adrenaline RC for hosting this event. As they did last year, they did this year as well. They did a fantastic job with the track maintenance, with calling the race, everything. They ran a really good program. Really nice place to go racing. I really enjoyed it there. Thanks to Eric for putting this event together. This, I believe, is the 18th year that he has been running the Vintage Offroad Nationals. This, I think, was the biggest one yet. We had the most entries. So a really competitive field at the top in the A main. It was really, really good. And thanks to all my friends. You guys know who you are. It was really nice to meet some new faces like Chris Van Air. He and I have been friends on Facebook for a couple of years now, but I never met him in person. And so, we had a chance to go to dinner and spend some time together, and it was really nice to, get to know him a little more. Really cool dude, and he's fast. So that was fun. It was a good time. So yeah, that's kind of it for now. Looking forward to next year already. So thanks for watching.